Hey, peace world. Thanks for pressing play on another Pay Me No Mind sports and entertainment video. Getting ready to get into some bite down boxing on last night's Showtime card featuring Danny Hurd versus Ivan Redcash, Jared Hurd versus Francisco Santana, as well as in the opener, Stephen Fulton versus Arnold Haggai. First, obviously, man, horrible news today. The passing of five-time NBA champion and Laker great and father and husband, Kobe Bryant, 41 years old. The loss of him and his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna. So it's been a day full of reflection and mourning and all of that. In the wake of that happening. I'm sure you followed the story and are witnessing all of the outpouring of love and light and support to everybody, and especially being sent to his wife Vanessa and the rest of his family, as well as the others that lost their lives in that tragedy. So it's just a lot to think about today. Feel free to check out bitedownboxing.com. I did do a write up. It's kind of a recap, but then it was kind of mixing in some different thoughts on Showtime boxing and where we are with the boxing schedule and boxing politics and network stuff. Just touching on a few different things. I did want to come on though, and I'll put the link to the article in the description of this. I want to try to keep this short. Starting in the main event, we'll start from the top and work down. Garcia really impressed me. To right. I know many of us are disappointed in some of his fights in the last year or so. Me with him being I mentioned this before it even became a story. With him kind of not having shoulder was dry. With him not having with losing the championship fights that he was in, Thurman and Porter, and not really having a direct path back to a title. I was very disappointed in the fact that there wasn't more creativity by everybody involved. There wasn't more, of a challenging spirit on his behalf, not to try to go out and face Bud Crawford when he first got to the division and claimed the WBO title from Jeff Horn, and Garcia found himself on the outside looking in. I was personally disappointed with there not being any impetus to make that fight happen. I know money, I know all of that stuff can get involved, but just for Garcia not to be adamant, and not to be demanding, I don't know, disappointed me. So anyway, he comes in last night against Ivan Redkach. Redkach, he took the fight out of Redkach very early, and that's kind of where if I had to sum it up, that's where I am with Danny Garcia. He's definitely a talented fighter, a very good fighter. But I don't know if any of the dope stuff and the good stuff boxing stuff that I saw last night, I don't know if he can pull any of that off against the other elite fighters or the elite fighters at welterweight. He's just heavy-footed. He's not that dynamic of a mover. And it's funny because both guys on this card named Swift are really not swift in the true sense of the word. Now, Garcia is pretty swift with his countering, and returning fire once he's hit. But all in all, he's just not a dynamic mover. But like, I was very impressed with some of his hand defense, keeping his hand home, to defend himself at times. And it kind of put me in the mind of David Benavidez, who's another guy who parries shots very well and has his hands consistently well positioned to be defensively responsible. he tried to step it up in points, and and the way that he built up the fight, working the single shots early, going to the body, breaking down Redkach a little bit, breaking his confidence down, then mixing in the combinations, then getting to some angles. Like I said, he impressed me, but that's against Ivan Redkach. He spent the last 2 rounds or so kind of just taking it easy and making sure not to get cut, not to get hurt or injured, or, things like that, and cruise to victory. Props to him. Shifting to the neck, and then we'll see. Everything is kind of on hold until we actually see what Manny Pacquiao was gonna do, and then Pacquiao has a McGregor fight to consider, a Floyd fight could be on, out there, until we see what Senator Pacquiao wants to do, and Mayweather actually how he fits in. Maybe I was ignorant to even mention him, but that situation may be specific in particular with Manny in particular, and then this McGregor situation. But until we see what Manny chooses to do, and then what we have with Errol Spence Jr., everything is kind of in limbo. Nobody's really going to do anything, to mess up their current standing and risk, a less lucrative fight, a less meaningful fight. Getting to Jarrett Hurd, now under the tutelage of Kay Korama, against Francisco Santana. One thing that I liked with him backing up is to spread out the damage or lessen the opportunity for him to, receive punishment, for him to receive shots. Seeing him move back, working the jab, I really liked him moving back, working the jab, and setting up the right hand versus previous fights where he was lunging forward, kind of a long lunging jab, getting that chin out over that front, over his knee, kind of not being in position to do anything with the right hand, making himself an easier target moving forward. I thought with him moving backwards, like I said, it allowed him to have more options defensively. It allowed him to do more with his right hand after the jab, to mix in different things there. And, it just seemed like his base was a lot better, which results to better offense and better defense. And so what I didn't like, well, I won't get into that, but the more of his, it seemed like the basis of his original or his older defense was kind of still in place. He bars that right hand, against his face, rolls his shoulder, but he mixed in more upper body movement, and then he was more mindful of just managing space, and being where he wanted to be when it suited him best. He didn't totally, you're going to get hit in boxing. So, Santana was able to land some shots here and there. Obviously, Hurd could, took most of them. The one thing that just kind of stood out to me, and that's the thing with winning the big fights that he did in the exciting manner that he won them, just overshadowed, any other flaws. But now, not to fight a great opponent or a well-known opponent, not to have the big ending. Now he's not this, he's not that, he's not this. And that's kind of a little disappointing, but, he's not a great watch in space. And it's funny because him and, as I just mentioned with Danny Garcia, they're not heavyweights, they're not cruiserweights, but they're just not great movers even at these lower weights that they're at. They're not dynamic movers and free flowing offensively, getting to angles. They're not fast twitch type guys. So another thing that I like to see along with him jabbing a little bit better, I mentioned this before in another video, he keeps that. It's times when he's in his defense and he has his left hand pointing backwards, and then he can only, flick his jab out there, a backhanded jab. I like that. Like I said, he was more not squared up completely, but his hand positioning was better to get that jab off and be more effective with it. And like I said, being able to do something behind it with the right hand. So I like, you can get in this possession, I guess, with your hand facing back away from the opponent, but you need to be there late, maybe later in the fight when you've secured a big lead, when you're not worried about being as offensive, minded. You can do that. But just earlier when I saw him doing that in fights, it was just like, wouldn't you want your jab in more of a ready position to go towards your opposition? I just never liked that look. And then he would kind of turn and even like throw it underhanded a little bit. So again, I just thought with him getting his footwork a little bit better, being a lot more mindful of his positioning, his hand placement, I thought all of these things were pretty good. His offense is just awkward looking. I don't know a better way to put it. His offense just he's not a very fluid guy. He's a bigger guy, and the left hook sometimes was a little more of arm punches, and everything just seems to be kind of telegraphed. It's not coming off of those out of his stance like some of the slicker guys. He's just not a slicker guy. That doesn't mean that he can't get back, and be competitive in, in some bigger toughness, relentlessness, being able to take a shot, to deliver your best shot. All of these things are can still be a part of a formula for him to win. Although it could be challenging against or Jamel Charlo. We saw that Tony Harrison was outboxing him earlier in that fight. Excuse me. So it'll be interesting to see what Hurd does moving forward. What's the target? Once they get back and review, him and the team review, what they accomplished, what they were able to implement in this fight, what they can add in the next fight, who that opponent is. It'll be interesting to see what they do. Getting into that final fight, and I hate to make a longer video, but it's 3 fights. They all went the distance. Hurd did get the knockdown behind the left hand, behind a series of left hooks, then finishing with that right uppercut that just finally beat down the smaller Chia Santana. Wins by, maybe just losing a round or two. Getting over to the opener, Cool Boy Steph Fulton versus Arnold Haggai. This played out exactly like I thought it would. Haggai is a guy we've seen on Showbox 2 or 3 times. He's had varying levels of success over there. He's comes from a mixed martial arts background. And he's an A to B guy, an aggressive guy, kind of no nonsense, not a whole lot of creativity, not the most versatile guy, but a steady opponent. He was undefeated, I believe, 16-0-1. And Cool Boy Steph is he's one of these guys who's stayed busy, who's progressed and gotten better. His confidence has matured. His boxing ability is pretty sound. He's a guy, trying to make it out of, meager beginnings and whatnot. Probably not many other, not interest, but no plan B, so, and he's a talented guy to a certain extent. Not the biggest puncher. He had knocked out two of his last 3 opponents, knocked all 3 of them down at least once. And, he comes from a fighting city, in Philadelphia. It's good to see Showtime trying to mix a new guy in, see what they can do with him, what can be done with him. and he just outboxed, outmaneuvered, attacked wisely and smartly. Made his punches count when he did take risks. He was able to get away most of the time when he wanted to get away. He took some good shots from Hey Guy. He didn't falter or crumble under the roughhouse tactics when Hey Guy got frustrated. When Hey Guy did some things, pushed the beyond the pale and whatnot, he responded accordingly. I like him, in the mix at super bantamweight. Whether or not it's Brandon Figueroa next, or if it's down the road is a Ray Vargas, I think he brings a different vibe to the division and the top guys at the division. He picks up the WBO belt with behind that wide decision, the WBO Intercontinental title, to go along with his IB International Boxing Organization. I believe IBO title is what he holds. And, I salute Showtime for investing in a new face, and trying to add a new, talent to their lineup of guys that they can actually count on to be to televise. So I don't know how the night will be received in terms of, it seemed like a lot of fans were somewhat disenchanted, not truly engaged by the fights. You kind of have to be a little understanding of the circumstances surrounding it, the co-main and the main, with Hurd being in between trainers, coming back off of his first loss, and kind of trying to reestablish himself and regain control of his future. This is a guy that was on the cusp of pound for pound, consideration, 10 months ago and whatnot. And then also with Danny Garcia, like I said, I know we've been impatient with his moves. And the choices of the of the PBC with its welterweight talent, but this is one of the like I said, everything is kind of in limbo until we see what two of the top 3 or 4 guys can really do. So that's not his fault. It's really not Showtime's fault. It's not Steven Espinosa's fault. Injuries and kind of like off the field issues in boxing are, it's critical, because it sets a lot of things in motion, or disrupts, months and months of planning and building towards something. It can upset all of that. So I don't know if the boxing world is patient enough to kind of let that unfold, but that is the reality of the situation at the moment. So let me get on off of here, man. Like I said, feel free to check out. I have a photo gallery on there, some different commentary on different aspects of the card. Bite down boxing, man. Don't let them count you out. Again, peace and love and light to the Bryant family, all the surviving family and whatnot, and the surviving families from the other souls who lost their life, who've yet to be identified, other than the baseball coach that they mentioned, and the loss of kids and parents that couldn't do anything for their kids in this treacherous situation. I mean, that's just completely unimaginable, man. You got to make these days count, man. Every breath is precious. But let me get on off here, man. Don't let them count you out. Pay me no mind. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. 1.